This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is... Today we will be talking about bouncer, bodyguard, actor, and rapper Mr. T. He's a subject I picked because he is one of the most iconic stars to us Gen Xers, a man who appeared in nearly every form of media available in the 1980s. Nate, how much do you know about Mr. T? Anything you want to go over before we talk about him today?
Basically, I know him from, of course, A-Team, and I know him from Rocky. What was that?
It'd be Rocky 3.
Rocky 3. And then, of course, the first thing I think about Mr. T, which is totally stupid, I think about that cartoon he was in and the cereal.
Yep. We're actually going to touch on those too.
Okay. Like, outside of that, like just, Mr. T as a cultural face.
Yep, that's what he was. He was just basically the face of the 80s for us. And we will actually get into both the cereal and that cartoon because they have some interesting facts behind them.
Yay.
Yay, indeed. All right, let's get back into Mr. T. Birth name, Lawrence Thoreau. He was born in the projects on the south side of Chicago, May 21st, 1952, and was the youngest son in a family of 12 with 4 sisters and 7 brothers.
Jeez.
Right? Not having any money to speak of, they lived in a 3-room apartment and often slept 3 to a bed due to the cramped living conditions they had. Now, when Lawrence was 5, his father said, "See ya," and headed out for the proverbial pack of smokes and never came back or made any further contact with them. This left more bed space, but also left his mother to raise all 12 kids by herself with a paltry $87 a month welfare check.
That's just messed up. I mean, both welfare check and him just taking off like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, could be the bright side. I mean, he might have been a raging alcoholic who went on to beat every person he encountered the rest of his life. So maybe he left people.
Mr. T could have been, or
no, Mr. T's dad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always like, well, he could have been a murderer. So,
yeah, well, he could have been because I mean, Mr. T's dad never shows up, and he's never talked about by Mr. T after this.
So even after he made it big, the guy never connected the dots.
Yep.
Like, oh, hey, that.
Nope, never came back in, and I don't even know his dad's name.
Well,
Mr. T literally never talks about him outside of the fact he just took a hike when he was 5.
Yeah, it could have been like Coco. You guys remember the movie Coco?
I never saw the movie Coco. Explain.
The same thing where like the husband left for music and was never seen again, and so the continuing generations hated music because music is stolen away. But come to find out, dude was murdered, and he was I'm just basically a long way of saying he could be dead. Because again, like, I assume so purely based on the fact that he didn't. I'm assuming a piece of shit like that would not pass up their opportunity to try to take advantage of his son. That's where my assumptions come in. Something bad must have happened to him. Now, he was still a piece of shit. I'm not saying, what if he was actually legitimately went out and smokes to go kill? I'm not saying that. I think he was a piece of shit who took off. I'm just saying, like, it surprises me that same guy would. I've realized I'm saying piece of shit a lot. That same guy wouldn't just like, look, that guy I left a long time ago is now super rich and famous. I'm not going to get mine. I have too much pride to try to lower myself after abandoning my family.
It's funny to bring this up because there might actually be a pretty decent reason he never got in touch with Mr. T again. And it might have been because of something Mr. T did. We'll go into that in just a few, actually. I'm glad you brought this up. Yes. So anyways,
that carries the implication of Mr. T's got blood in his hands.
Actually, there is a quote by him somewhere along the way that's kind of along those lines, but it has nothing to do with his father.
Okay.
Yep. So, $87 a month welfare check to raise 12 people. That's that's not much money going around. Probably a lot of cheese sandwiches and other pancakes for breakfast and this and that. Really cheap food. You know how that kind of stuff goes.
Totally.
Okay, his mother's dedication and working herself to the bone for her family did not go unnoticed by Lawrence, who did odd jobs as a child to help out, washing windows and doing chores for the neighbors, and basically doing as much as he could, bringing in some extra money here and there to help out. Because seeing his mom work herself ragged for the family, Lawrence, as a young man, made a promise to himself. As soon as he made it big and got some money, she was going to live on Easy Street, and he was going to make sure of it. He was going to buy her everything she needed and basically be like, "Hey, Mom, you took care of me. Now's my time to take care of you." And this was a promise that, a lot of people in this position, I'm sure, made. But young Lawrence, he would actually achieve this goal, unlike many of these people. Boy, howdy. Excuse me.
Boy, howdy.
Boy, howdy. Boy, howdy, he did. He had always been very close to his mother. He called her every day on the phone, even when he was in his most famous days, all the way throughout his life, called her every day, talked about her every chance he could in interviews for movies. Doesn't matter the movie or the cartoon or the show, whatever he's doing, he'd always try to drop his mom how much he loved her, a little blurb. And even in his WWE Hall of Fame acceptance speech, he brought up his mom and how much he loved her and how big of an influence it was. And he's totally unashamed of his love for his mother. And he's quoted as saying he's absolutely a mama's boy, but he's not a wimp. Can't really argue that topic.
So I was laughing at the very end of Coitus. He's just like, stands up. He's like, oh, that's like my mother.
It wasn't just a tagline. He was really into his mom. It sounds weird when I say it that way.
Yeah, it sounds like it
was And as a side note, this is probably smart of Mr. T. As much as he talked about her, never brought up her name because I cannot find her name anywhere or anything about her other than just, she was Mr. T's mom.
It's kind of sus. Like, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a mom, not, a tube in a science lab. I'm not a plant here from planets,
Okay, Corona. Back in the day, Mr. T actually escaped from a lab where there's just an entire warehouse just full of tubes filled with various Mr. T's of various sizes. We got giant T, mini T, middle T, and here's Mr. T. That would be actually kind of cool. Have just a whole army of Mr. T's wandering around. I don't know what you'd do with them, but
yeah, what would you do with them? I mean, to what end?
Yeah, I mean, you could have an interesting choir, I guess.
I mean, I guess you could hunt fools.
Yeah, you could. Have a lot of pity for fools.
Indeed.
A big old fool pity party. Also, because of his mother, he grew up very devout Christian and stayed that way his entire life. His entire life, he's done a lot of charity work for churches, and he also credits religion to keeping him away from drugs and alcohol his whole life as well. Which, as far as I can tell, I don't think he really was ever into drugs or alcohol. I saw a couple pictures of him holding like a booze bottle in his hand, but it was more like he was posing for pictures at a bar and whatnot. So, maybe he does actually have a sober life.
I mean, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, yeah. I definitely know he turned to a preacher at some point.
Yep. Pretty much all he does nowadays, too, is just do preaching and charity work for churches. Well, his mother was incredibly supportive and loving of him and his siblings. Outside of the family home, not much positivity growing up. He remembers him and his family always being talked down to and disrespected. Being told the usual things you can imagine the poors of the ghettos hearing. You're never going to amount to anything. You're poor because you deserve it. You're all just lazy. The usual things. We're kind of just talking about that in the pre-show talk a little bit.
Indeed.
In the poor ghettos. Though of all the insults, one thing really stuck in his craw and he hated it more than the others. He really, really disliked being called boy, as was the insult of the time. Remember when typically stereotype of Southern white dude, boy, you don't know what you're talking about, boy. Come over here, boy. Let me learn you, boy.
I automatically flashed to my high school where I've told this guy about this guy before. He was it a civ teacher, and he looked like Foghorn Leghorn and even spoke like him. And he just straight up was like, I say, boy, like, dude, really? Do you have to be just like him?
Huh. He's like, boy, you got to understand me. I don't sound like Foghorn Leghorn. Foghorn Leghorn sounds like me. I imagine that's how the whole exchange would go there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that legitimately talk like that. Foghorn Leghorn was based off of somebody.
Yeah, it wasn't born out of a vacuum.
Them Kentucky Colonels and the such. But
good old Kentucky Colonels.
Yep.
Which, as I've said before, my mother-in-law actually ran into the Colonel before he died. She said he was a dick.
Yeah, I've heard shows and read interviews and stuff. He was not a good man. He tried to kill somebody with a shotgun at one point over a rival chicken place sign or something like that.
Oh, wow. And then, of course, his wife had his restaurant, who I actually I live very close to. It's just within a mile out. It's within a mile of the city border of the city I live in. So it's like right there. I can get there in like 15 minutes. Claudia Sanders. And I'd gone there before, and it was pretty nice. It was like this large wooden house, and you go in. It was set up very much like
almost kind of like a bed and breakfast sort of thing.
Yeah, almost like a Cracker Barrel, but not quite. Maybe a little bit lower rent Cracker Barrel, but it's still nice. And then it happened to burn down. I'm doing a look of Mr. Evil, Dr. Evil. Sorry, he didn't go to 7 years of evil medical school to be called Mister. But it mysteriously burned down, and there was a just universal raised eyebrow, like burned down, huh?
Just happened to burn down.
Especially since like what they built in its place. Your eyebrow goes a little bit higher up. They did not replace it to how it just happened to look. They made mass improvements to that place. It doesn't look anything like it did originally. So
that's one of those things too, where the fire starts at like 3 a.m. on a day they're not even open, so nobody's been in the restaurant forever.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those.
Some hobos eating really well for a few nights after the fire he started.
Like, I have no proof, but look,
allegedly this is how it went down.
Yeah, I have zero proof, but
hey, hobo, you want a big old bucket of fried chicken? All I gotta ask you to do is go set fire to this place.
It was kind of it was almost a greed universal. I was kind of looking at each other. It's like the silent nod, like, okay, we know what
local
happened.
News is kind of like giving you that nod, like, wait for the new restaurant to be open. It'll be nicer. We have it on good authority.
I went there once. It was fine. I don't know. I don't expect it. I've
kind of learned over the years, fried chicken can only get so good usually till it's just, kind of fried chicken.
But at that point, it's a restaurant, because the thing about having homemade fried chicken, if you know what you're doing, it's like, it's unique. And like every time you do it, it tastes generally similar, but there's
little different variances.
Yeah, right. But at a restaurant, they didn't lovingly put that thing. They got a truckload of chicken and they fried it all and they threw it out there with
some barely literate person is like reading a sheet being like, dump chicken in the fryer and push button 2.
But this guy, he used to go into fried chickens. I'm sure you've heard the story too. He used to go into Kentucky Fried Chickens and like jump the counter and go back there and tell them how they were doing it wrong. because they, it's once he sold the name,
the Colonel was doing this.
The Colonel was doing it.
Okay. I thought you were talking about some just random dude being
no.
I know
the Colonel,
better.
like, while he's still alive, the Colonel still did this. Because what he did was he sold the franchise, but they're like, your recipe's too expensive. Like, we'd be losing money if we just kept on making chicken with these
gilded saffron that you want kind of stuff.
And so they're like, we're going to do what's closest, but we're going to do what's cheapest. And so he very loudly said that Kentucky Fried Chicken's chicken was awful, and to the point where they sued him to shut him up. And they basically, because they're like, he's talking, he's the Colonel, we need to stop him. And the judge is like, but he's the Colonel. Like, you can't make, it's a free country. You can't make him shut up.
Yeah, right. As long as he's not, advertising himself as still the spokesman, really. I mean, people are still going to assume he's the spokesman, but he can't go around being like, I'm talking on behalf of.
Yeah, so, this is all old stuff. I mean, obviously, the dude's been dead for a while.
Okay, young Lawrence really disliked being called boy, and people did it a lot to him. No matter how he acted, no matter how responsible or immature he acted, people just kept calling him boy. He'd always try to make himself a little bit better, get cut down with another boy comment. You get how these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But Lawrence did have a pretty unique idea of how to combat this, though. He had an idea. He determined that if he changed his first name to Mr., then that's what they'd have to call him from now on. No one could call him boy anymore because his name was Mr. Change people like, hey, what's your name? Mr. T. Then, I mean, you can't really call him anything else other than Mr. from then on, really, unless you want to be a total dick and start a fight. Okay. So,
he was a big enough guy. Like, I don't know who'd want to start a fight with that guy.
Yeah, he didn't actually start bulking up a whole lot until late teens, actually. Because for his 18th birthday, Lawrence got the gift of a new attitude. He started talking the talk, walking the walk, building muscles, and gaining wit, and legally changed his name to Mr. T. First name Mr., last name T. Once he became Mr. T, he quickly scrubbed Lawrence Thoreau from existence. Almost immediately, his driver's license, bank accounts, mailing address, and everything said Mr. T on it legally. If the world was going to give him respect, he was going to take it by just Mr. T-ing himself into respect. And this might actually go into why his dad could never find him. Because, I mean, if your kid doesn't look anything like he did when you left him when he was 5, and all of a sudden there's just some dude, Mr. T, going around.
Well, isn't that always true? Like, you don't look the same. Yeah, sure, you have similar characteristics, but I don't know. Yeah,
but also, I mean, okay, if all of a sudden 25 years later, you're looking around and be like, hey, that dude kind of looks like my kid, but his name's Mr. T. Weird.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're really motivated and just assume that everybody you see on TV that kind of looks like your kid might be your kid. You want to go researching it, but
To start
do you really think
randomly
Deadbeat
chasing after-
Dad's just sitting? Well, maybe he is actually. Yeah, just sitting at home, just scribbling down all the names of African American actors on there. Hey, maybe the kid that said Dynamite is my kid, and I can get some money out of him.
What's his real name?
The Dynamite Kid.
What was his name? You know what? I'm not gonna look.
This is one of those names that if we're not thinking about it, it would literally just pop into my head just randomly, because he is one of those guys who is super bitter about his fame and the fact he was based off of a catchphrase.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like everyone wants their 15 minutes, and that guy. I mean, he had more than 15 minutes. And of course, everyone wants money, but like when you're known for that one thing, I would definitely get sick of it.
Yeah. I think it might also have to do with how early or young you get famous in life. Because, like, if all of a sudden I was known for a catchphrase at 18, I might get kind of pissy because I'm like, well, I don't want to get shoehorned into this. At the age of 43, I might be like, screw it, I'll give them what they want. Wubba-lubba-dub-dub, over and over and over again until I die.
Give me money.
Yeah, because I believe the Dynamite Kid, his whole thing was he didn't want to be like a serious actor. He was like, hey, I could go do Broadways and movies and this and that if I could just get out of this Dynamite Kid.
You?
What was that?
It sounded like you said you didn't want to.
He didn't want to. Yeah. Or at least that's what I was led to believe.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, look at the guy from Cranston. You know, he went from Malcolm in the Middle, who was a total like nut job or crazy funny dad, and then he went to Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So
what did he do before all that? Just kind of bit parts, didn't he? Before
he did Seinfeld. He did a really popular role in Seinfeld. He was just like a one-off, but he was like the dentist.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was in other little bit things here and there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and actually, it's funny how he started that story because the Seinfeld bit. Apparently, whoever's in the Seinfeld show, and he did that. One of the people, like the showrunners, one of the main people, but like someone who had grown up, he's one of the lead guys from Breaking Bad, and because he worked with them at one time, that's how he got the Breaking Bad role. Not the Malcolm Middle. It was between there. Like once the Malcolm Middle ended, they were looking for a guy for Breaking Bad, and then they reached out to him based on a role that he did before Malcolm Middle. So anyway.
Yes, it's called a happy coincidence.
It is happy coincidence. Of course, it's all who you know.
This is very true, especially in Hollywood, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I'm going to say out loud, where's my nepotism?
Yeah. About a year after adopting the Mr. T moniker, he had his first child with his high school girlfriend. So Mr. T did what any good father would do and went out hunting for a career to support them. Well, he was a pretty strong and athletic guy, so he first tried out for the Green Bay Packers football team. Apparently, he was a pretty talented football player, but he blew out his knee, and that was the end of that.
That would suck. Can I try out? Sure. Blam. Well, never mind. Sorry.
Yep, pretty much. And they're like, hey, you kind of got some talent. You're doing all right. Show up for some more practices. Oh, and now you got a limp for the rest of your life, probably. I don't know if he has a limp, but probably when it rains.
Right. Well, now he's older, he might. I mean, I think he was all good during his 18 days, but those 18 days was a while ago.
Yep. Next up, he got a job with the city of Chicago working a gym for underprivileged kids. He loved this job, and it also laid the foundation for his future love of kids and charity as well, but sadly, it didn't last more than a few years as funding dried up and the gym closed down in the mid-70s. He decided to try to use his physicality again for his next job as he enlisted into a basic training with the Army and was assigned military police training. Now, this job didn't tickle his fancy as he moved on pretty quick, but not before one interesting side note I read, and one that I think plays into our story just a little bit later. The year is 1976, and while on training exercise in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, he committed a minor infraction, and his platoon sergeant decided to teach him a lesson by ordering him to cut down trees with an axe. Just a couple of hours later, Mr. T had felled about 70 trees with that axe and was ordered to stop because they were running out of trees for him to cut down as punishment. I bring this up because he has another incident with trees in the future. Yeah, maybe he's got a thing against trees. He goes back for a long
trees.
Time. He might very well. Again, we'll touch on this later.
He was inappropriately touched by an ent.
Father Ent, what are you doing? Come here, child.
No.
Come to me in the rectory.
Come in my rectory.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah, whoever came up with the term rectory way back in the day needs to be like teleported to the future and be like, look what they've done to your word. Deciding the uptight and clinical nature of the military wasn't his style, he went the other direction and started working as a bouncer at the famous Chicago nightclub Dingbats. And here's where it all starts for the man. He cranks up the look and the attitude to an 11, and this is also where he begins his famous gold chain necklace. Remember that giant gold chain necklace he wore?
Oh yeah, I mean that was kind of his thing.
It's kind of his iconic thing, yeah.
Well, that and his mohawk.
Mohawk, yep. And we're about to get into the origin story of those. So the giant necklace basically started out as a lost and found for the club. Drunk or forgetful patrons would lose their jewelry, and Mr. T would collect the items and wear them while he was working the door from then on out. If someone returned it and noticed their missing jewelry, T was more than happy to give it back to him. Like, oh yeah, you left this behind, man. Do better next time. However, some of the jewelry was taken as battle mementos during his skirmishes as a bouncer. And in this case, he would actually keep wearing that jewelry as a challenge to the former owner. Want your jewelry back? Well, come and try to take it from me. Yeah, no one ever tried to take their jewelry back, apparently, as the story goes. He just kept the jewelry, and it helped build his image and notoriety as the necklace got bigger and bigger.
And while if this is medieval, like okay, fight for honor or whatever, but like this is still a place by laws. I mean, I'm pretty sure even though he was a drunk asshole and got his ass beat, he can't be like, oh, Your Honor, I know he wants his very expensive necklace back, but he lost it in combat, so it's mine now.
Do you really want to go to all the trouble of going to court and admitting you got your ass beat in front of God and the world for over a $100 necklace?
I mean, it depends on the situation. You go home, your wife's like, where's that necklace? I was gonna give it. It was my grandfather's necklace, and he, died. He smuggled it home in his butt. We need it back.
Well, I'm gonna say if you're at a nightclub called Dingbats from Chicago and you come home missing your jewelry and your wife talks back to you, you probably just hit her, Nate. I mean, we're not talking about this as the fucking Ritz-Carlton. This is a club called Dingbats in the south side of Chicago.
I guess you're right.
In fact, we're going to go into what kind of stuff happened at Dingbats here. Because how tough of a bouncer was Mr. T? Well, the former owner of Dingbats, Ron Brisman, remembers multiple times people would point a gun straight at Mr. T's face. Mr. T wouldn't even flinch. With a serious tone, he'd just say, you don't want to do this. And those intimidation checks worked every time. Never got shot. And then way up the F around and find out scale, a former manager of Dingbats also tells a story where he personally was stabbed during a scuffle. Mr. T, not like seeing his manager stabbed, picked up the stabber and body slammed him right on top of a fire hydrant, shattering his ribs and ending the fight right then and there.
I can imagine getting up from that. I mean, the fire hydrant is exactly like unbreakable. And if he hit it just on his spine, it's like, oh, no, yeah, I didn't kill him, but he'll never walk again.
Yep. Well, don't go around stabbing people. Don't go around stabbing Mr. T's boss, I guess is the actual name of the story there.
Was it The More You Know? The rainbow coming
up? Yep. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, we need an animation of Mr. T just picking up somebody, just body slamming, and all of a sudden that little star comes over the top.
The more you know.
Yep, Mr. T pointing out, more you know, fool.
Don't fuck with Mr. T.
Yep. But can't you imagine that just getting picked up and dropped on, or body slammed onto a fire hydrant?
Oh, that'd be awful.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing good comes from that.
Yeah. By his and others' recollection, as Jobby got into about 200 fights. Being it's a South Chicago nightclub named Dingbats, I can kind of believe that number. City got sued a lot, but never lost a lawsuit over it. People tend to notice that sort of badassery, and thus began his next gig, professional bodyguard. His client list was said to include Steve McQueen, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Leon Spinks. The last three being boxers.
I was going to say, I'm just going to pretend like I know the last few.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, boxer. Joe Frazier, boxer. Leon Spinks, boxer. Leon Spinks was actually the big one that kind of got him into the limelight, because I believe it was a Madison Square Garden show with, 80,000 people or something like that he attended. And everybody's like, ooh, look at that guy.
But you best believe in Muhammad Ali's the boxer. That's like, he's huge around here. He's from Louisville, so.
Is he?
Oh, yeah, he's from Louisville, so, dude.
Do most people call him Cassius Clay down there?
No, they call him Muhammad Ali. They have a whole museum dedicated to him, and like you drove downtown, there's like a side of one of the buildings is him painted on it. And he's a big deal over here. Still, I mean, I think he's dead too. I saw him once from a distance. He came to a movie theater once, but that was like when he wasn't Muhammad Ali anymore. He was Muhammad Ali, but he wasn't. He wasn't talking about butterflies and stinging. He was
Shaky Jones.
Yeah, he was more like, where am I? What's my... Who are you?
Where am I? I used to be a big, strong man.
It's like got punched in the head a lot. I mean, he was great. I mean, don't get me wrong, Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Ali, but you get punched that many times, it does something to you.
Yeah, one would think that. I mean, repeated brain damage. Around this time, working as a bodyguard is reported he is making $3,000 to $10,000 a day, depending on the client. He was all about commanding respect and honing his image at this point. At first, he didn't have his signature mohawk. He actually had his hair in the shape of a T as a bouncer. And when people would ask his name, he would just bend over at the waist to show them the big T on his head and be like, T, Mr. T. Which sounds kind of corny in a way, but whatever worked for him.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
T, Mr. T is like, okay, you fucking...
Yeah. All right.
James Bond, like your thing's shaking, not stirred, or...
Yep. And then you got to make sure your head's like perfectly shaved all the time. Other people are going to be like, you're Mr. Fuzzhead?
Yeah, Fuzzy T?
Yeah, Fuzzy T. Then one day he saw a Mandinkan warrior sporting a mohawk in a National Geographic and said to his friends, by golly, that's a look for me, my good chaps. That's exactly how he said it, Nate. Trust me.
I'm sure was exactly
by golly, he put down his monocle and said, will you come over here and look at this? By crom. This shall be my new look. Fetch me my spats. I'm going to the barber.
Why, Senor T.
At this point, he even adopted the slogan, Mr. T is the best bodyguard to have, next to God. Remember, he's religious, so can't be above God.
But here's the thing. Let me submit this to you. I would think my cat would be a better bodyguard than God. I mean, look at, I don't know, the world. He's look, he died. Oh, how did he die? Well, his bodyguard was God. Well, there you go.
Well, that just means God had a bigger plan for him.
He
cannot possibly fathom.
Right. It's too bad he, that nerve gas was released and everyone's dead. Oh, fortunately, he was walking around and just a container in his pocket full of this virus. He just depended on God to help prevent anything happening.
Mr. T's next big break would come in 1980 when NBC came to Chicago to film America's Toughest Bouncer. The events included throwing around 150-pound stuntmen, breaking through doors, weightlifting, and, of course, the dwarf toss.
I mean, how low of ideas? They're like, okay, what are we going to do? I don't know. World's strongest bouncer? Okay, sure. That sounds great.
And this is like part of their wide world of sports things. But, I mean, how could they be tapped out with ideas right now? There's only 3 networks back then. They had plenty of ideas to go around.
I mean, dude, your competition's like 2 other people. Just don't suck. That's all you got to do. Or suck less than the next guy.
Yeah. That's kind of all competitions, though. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be the least suckiest.
I suppose. I don't know. But even that's not true because we've both seen some pretty sucky stuff take off like crazy.
This is true.
Quality television just like canceled after several episodes. Meanwhile, you've got, I don't know, I'm blanking on a name.
The Bloody Splish Splash Show.
Right. Or Love is Blind.
Or, what was that other one? MILF Island. I heard about.
Oh my God. I saw a trailer for that. I showed Jenny. She's just like, oh my God, I'm not watching that. Because she definitely watched Love is Blind. She was all about some Love is Blind. And I saw some of it too, and they're just the worst. I mean, they're just all the worst.
Yeah, is it just a bunch of just like generic people and whatnot? Or
no, they're not. I mean, they're all, a lot of them are just bad people.
Gotcha.
And plus they're like, the girls are always totally made up. And you can, if you look at them, you can kind of see behind the makeup, and they're not as pretty as they're presenting themselves.
Oh yeah, no.
And
their name's probably not really Saffron either.
And I mean, they go in this room. The idea is, they each go in the room and they talk to each other for a while, and they get to know each other. Beneath the skin, they know their real selves, but it's like 2 weeks maybe. And so then they're like, okay, you'll get married. After like, I don't know, 6 weeks.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it is all just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's
people looking for their 15 minutes of fame.
It's exactly what it is.
And if you're not talented, you might as well just use the fact you're single and get married.
Yeah, I'm not saying I am by no means breaking like, oh my God, he's speaking the truth. Let's follow him. I'm not saying anything 1,000 other people haven't said, but still, it really is. But I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say all that and then follow it with it's entertaining. Like I don't necessarily watch it. I'm not gonna turn it on and watch it for myself. However, if I'm in the room and Jenny's watching it, yeah, I'll kind of poke at it and see what's up.
Yeah. Speaking of poking at things and seeing what's up, all finalists of the toughest bouncer would meet in a boxing match to determine the winner.
Like no holds barred, WWF style where there's, punching at the same time or what?
No, an actual real legitimate boxing match. An actual, hey, we're gonna go forth and fisticuffs at noon.
Okay, so 1-on-1 with a tiered system going
down.
Like
exactly. Okay. In a boxing pre-match interview, Mr. T to the camera said, "I just feel sorry for the guy I have to box. I just feel real sorry for him." He went on to win the event, but most importantly, a certain Sylvester Stallone, who just happened to be looking for the antagonist for Rocky III, was watching this. And he loved Mr. T's look, and he loved that interview that he gave. The interview where he said, "I just feel sorry for the guy who I have to box. I just feel real sorry for him." That line is actually what Stallone...
Did he pity the fool? Does he pity the fool yet? Did he say the thing?
In fact, that line I just said, that is what Stallone based the Rocky III line, "I don't hate him, but I pity the fool," off of. Mr. T did not write that line. Stallone did, and he based that off of a Mr. T interview from that Toughest Bouncer show. So yes, you were correct, Nate. This is where it came up with "I pity the fool."
I'm not correct, because he did not come up with this. Sylvester Stallone came up with it.
Correct. Well, there is a little bit of some debate. Some people are kind of iffy, but literally Sylvester Stallone has the only screenwriting credit for the movie. And that's where the line came from, was that movie. So it's most people believe that it is a combination of Mr. T doing that one interview and Stallone just twisting that around to sound better for them. And again, the full line is not just "I pity the fool," it's "I don't hate him, but I pity the fool." Now, Mr. T did actually eventually trademark this line, "I pity the fool," in 2015 because it was so iconically tied to him.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I cannot blame him either on that. May as well. I mean, if anybody else uses that line, they kind of just look stupid, or you're immediately going to think Mr. T, so you might as well lock it in.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody who would try to argue, no, Sylvester Stallone should get the credit for that.
Yeah, right. So, also, Mr. T kind of has his own idea of what that phrase means, "I pity the fool." You see, most people, when they see it, they think of it as an insult. Mr. T's calling somebody an idiot, and he just feels bad for them being an idiot or a fool. But Mr. T, his spin on it, he associates it with the biblical version of pity, which means showing mercy or forgiveness. And in his mind, that line is more of him being like, "Hey, man, I know you're a fool, but I forgive you in this situation." I know it's more of a loving phrase in his mind than a condemnation phrase of.
I mean,
but this also goes back to him being very religious and not wanting to be a bad role model kind of thing.
Again, I guess it's not my, it's his phrase. If he can't, who am I to dictate what he considers that saying to mean?
You're Nathan Townsend. Boom all you want. You just did.
I did boom.
Boo! Boo!
I stand by that booing. However, it doesn't mean anything to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, So where Mr. T is sitting at home and he just shudders. Somebody trash talked my phrase. So now you know what he actually thinks of that phrase. It's not quite what most people think it is.
And it's no telling whether he's like, "Oh no, this phrase taken off." His mom says something. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'll change it." He's like, "Oh no, it's biblical pitying." Like everyone just kind of looking like, "Really biblical?" He's like, "Yes, biblical." He's kind of gives them the look and raise their fist. That's exactly what it means. Like, "Oh yeah, Mr. T, yeah, excellent, yes."
Yep. Back to Stallone. He knew he found his villain for Rocky III in Mr. T, as Mr. T had the looks and the voice and even the boxing ability he needed, so the job went to him. There was one story about right before Mr. T, they thought they had the absolute perfect boxer. He was just this massive mountain of a man, and had all the boxing skills and intimidation that he needed. Unfortunately, he had an even more effeminate voice than Mike Tyson, more of a lisp and whatnot. Apparently, it was bad, and the dude could not act. "You look perfect." He was like, "Hello, I would like to be a boxer for you." This is massive dude with this cracky, warbly voice, and apparently it was a very shocking thing for them to see.
"Hi guys."
Yeah, that's basically what it was. "Hi guys, I would like to be the boxer in this movie. I pity the fool.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, yep. Apparently that's pretty much what the dude sounded like. Did not have that problem with Mr. T, however.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, nope. Rocky 3 was Mr. T's first acting role, and the credits even say, introducing Mr. T. And with the help of some acting coaches and some good solid work ethic, Mr. T killed his first acting gig, and that movie is what put him in the Hollywood spotlight for everyone to see.
Until his dark secret was revealed.
His name isn't really Mr. T. Well, I guess technically it is.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, it 100% is.
Yep. Right after Rocky 3, he appeared in another boxing film called Penitentiary 2, performing in a role specifically written for him. And he also, at the same time, appeared on an episode of the Canadian sketch comedy series Bizarre, where he fights and eats one Super Dave Osborne. Remember Super Dave, Dave?
I do remember Super Dave.
However, next was going to be Mr. T's most iconic role to date, and most iconic role of all time. Cut to LA, 1983, and producer Stephen J. Cannell, hot off the Rockford Files and The Greatest American Hero, gets called into the office of the president of NBC. Do you remember Stephen J. Cannell and all his productions? He had the little blurb at the end where he would be on the typewriter and he'd throw the piece of paper out and go like, doo, doo, doo.
Oh,
and he'd go on the piece of paper
yeah.
and make the big C. Yep.
Yeah.
If you ever saw that after or before a show, wherever it was, that was a Stephen J. Cannell production. Which
I assume the C is for Cannell.
No.
What's the C for?
Damn, I was going to try to think of something clever, but nothing came to mind.
I say again, boo.
Boo.
Have something on the spot.
Yep, I should have had something written down, but I did not predict your iron trap of a wit there, good sir. So, Stephen J. Cannell gets called in the office of the president of NBC, and here's Stephen J. Cannell's personal recount of how the meeting went down. This is his words and as close as he can remember it. President of NBC. Stephen, I have a show I want you to do. It's kind of like Mad Max, but it's not Mad Max. You remember The Dirty Dozen? Well, it's something kind of like that. And you know this guy, Mr. T, in the new Rocky movie that just came out? Well, he's going to drive the car. That was the idea Stephen J. Cannell was floated. And that half-baked and presumably cocaine-fueled idea became the A-Team.
How is it Mad Max?
I have no clue, dude. Maybe the original plan was slightly better.
I mean, if he's referring to the fact there's a car wreck every episode, okay, fine. I guess. But that's a stretch.
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea. And I don't even think Stephen J. Cannell knew. Because remember, this was the president of NBC. This doesn't mean he was good at his job. In fact, he actually lost his job shortly after this.
He doesn't even remember the meeting.
Yeah, probably not. But again, that's what Stephen said. His own words as he went to the meeting, and he just got blabbed at that, and he was just like, oh, so I guess this is what we're doing. How much do you remember about the A-Team anyways?
Like I said, I mean, there's a car wreck every episode.
Yeah, this is true.
Hundreds of rounds spent, and no one ever died.
There's occasional explosions of people like leaping away from them, being like, "Wah!"
I mean, after a while, you'd think the bad guys would be like, "They're not going to kill me." I mean, they're gonna
right.
shoot.
At some point, they could just like literally walk right up to one of the A-Team members, and they'd just be shooting all around. They'd just be like, "Pop! I shot you from 6 feet away."
And I mean, look, I know this is America, and it's fairly. Especially America in the 80s, getting a bunch of ammunition would be like, okay, sure, whatever. Like, do you want 12 boxes or 50? It's fine.
We'll load it up for you. Oh, all these other guns in your van. Well, that's America.
No question. But you'd still think that's a lot of ammunition they always fired with random ass guns, like almost MacGyvering.
Yeah.
There's something even out MacGyver.
And also the thing, too, is they have all these guns and weapons, yet they are on the run from the law, from the military, and some others still got all these like underground connections to buy everything they need and not get detected.
That's what I'm saying. Like, look, I understand they were an elite group of soldiers from
Vietnam.
I don't know why I like that, but Vietnam. I don't remember the trained Vietnam how to do like urban warfare, and not just urban warfare, but like spy shit. And for some reason, they're every mission like, oh, I've got a plan, and they bust out this stuff where it's like, who trained you in that and why? Because, I mean, were they CIA? I mean, if they're CIA, then that made more sense. But I don't believe they were CIA. They were just some, like, group in Vietnam. They got framed. And
Yeah, I do not
then
believe
they
they're
do
CIA
adventures.
either. I think they were just like military special forces was the term that was used. Because yeah, you did have like who was it, Face Man, who or which one was it that was constantly in disguises? He was like the master of disguise and would just show up and wear stuff
Yeah,
like a
yeah, that
rubber
guy.
monkey suit.
Right. It's like, how often was that rubber monkey suit useful
Right.
in the jungles of Vietnam?
Right.
How often are you like using your super secret spy tech to break into some kind of fucking hut in the middle of the jungle? I don't.
Yep.
I would like to see one time you had to use that ability.
It's just one of those things like, hey, for this mission, we're going to need a gorilla costume like we had back in Nam. I'm going to go rent one. And next thing you know, they're like, well, we need a driver's license and a deposit. So people at the costume shop look back, hey, wait a minute. This is a person I saw on the news who is wanted for war crimes. And not on top of that, too, they were so good at avoiding the government, yet any ma and pa who owned a bodega could be like, hey, we know where to find the A-team and hire them.
Right. My dog's missing. Let's call the A-team.
Yeah,
what?
right. And the government sure as couldn't find him. You'd think the government would just set up like a little, shop or something, be like, help, we're in need of the A-team. And sure enough, they would come out.
My 9-year-old grandma's having trouble with her Social Security. Let's call the A-team. First of all, I know who the A-team is. And second of all, here's their number. I found it written on the bathroom wall.
Yeah. And also, this is before cell phones, too. So, I mean, what do they do? Just hang out outside of a payphone with their van?
Right. Exactly. It's the 80s. Who did they call? What landline? Where is their numbers being routed to? And then where are those numbers going? And how did they establish that? Just, there's so many questions.
So very many questions.
Left unanswered.
And also, every episode, too, they would, or at least almost every episode, it felt like they would modify their van, just weld a bunch of stuff to it and turn it into like a tank. And then next week, it was all done. All the welding would fall off.
And then you had the crazy guy who I guess was the pilot, but he was
Mad Murdoch, I think it was his name. How did I remember that?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that bugged me about the A-team, too. A lot of times they'd be like held up in a barn somewhere surrounded by the bad guys. And all of a sudden there just happened to be like a welder and a giant pile of scrap steel and like an old military cannon, Civil War cannon for them to make.
Or some comedian who's like, look, I made a bomb with this tape and a stick of dynamite. I just happened to find laying around.
I made this bomb out of thin air. Oh, yeah, what'd you use? Thin air and a bomb.
I found it over here behind this manure.
Yeah.
Look at all this manure. I wonder what we'll do with this.
All right. In their first meeting, Stephen J. Cannell asked Mr. T about his iconic gold chains. And Mr. T told him that all those gold chains by this point weighed 50 pounds and took him over an hour to take off or put back on. So he basically never took them off. He slept in them, he wore them all around, and he showered in them.
Man, can you imagine how much that would stink?
Right? That was my thought, too, because so many dead skin cells got to get in there and whatnot.
I mean, surely you'd take it off from time to time. When that happened, and also you imagine the bruising that would just constantly hitting your chest,
right?
Even just like casually walking through the room.
Yes, because after reading this, I have like 6 necklaces or something like that I've collected over the years. I only wear a couple of them, but I took like all 6 of those, threw them on, and that was kind of heavy and uncomfortable. And that's like a whole whopping half ounce or so,
I mean, I'll give you this. He's, practicing like a Saiyan, so if he was working out with that stuff on, do take on Vegeta next. Okay, let me take these off. And he picks them up and he drops it, and like all the gold shatters the ground.
Yep, absolutely. The gold is fine, but it just makes this giant dent into the pavement. He's like, now I am at my full power.
Right. You've yet to see him in my final form.
Yep. And then after he takes off, he immediately just flat-foot jumps to the top of the nearest building.
Don't worry. Mr. T will take care of it.
I gotta say, that would be a pretty good intimidation check, too. If all of a sudden you're in the middle of fighting a guy and barely wins, he's like, hold up, pulls off 50 pounds of necklaces, like, thunka.
Or worse, he takes it off and then, like, wraps it around his fist like a fucking, like, glove. Like, okay, now I'll punch the shit out of you with this.
I am Power Fist! So, an hour to take on and off jewelry was not going to work for a TV show when, he's going to have to do costume changes and this and that. So they had the costume designers take a quick long look at his necklace. Quick long look. Yeah. And they decided to recreate the look of the necklaces and just add a whole quick connect. So something that would take him an hour before now just took a matter of seconds. You just walk up, throw those necklaces on him, and just quick connect them on and off. Mr. T loved the newfound convenience and started wearing the fake jewelry all the time and took all his good stuff and just stuck it in the bank because he liked being able to not have 50 pounds of weight around his neck at any moment. I can understand that.
Yeah, totally.
So on the A team, Mr. T played one B.A. Baracus. You want to guess what B.A. stands for?
Badass.
Honestly, that was my first thought too, but no, it is not. This is something more family friendly. Take a couple more guesses. I don't think you'll ever guess it.
Jesus saves.
BA is for Jesus saves.
Yes. It's like, I don't know what they're saying. That's what they mean to me.
BA stands for Jesus saves. Mr. T, are you illiterate? That's not the point.
Go fuck yourself, kid.
I never learned how to read.
Big ass. I don't know.
BA stands for Bosco Albert. Yep, that's right. Bosco Albert Baracus.
So it was a random name. It wasn't like standing for anything.
Nope. Yeah, I always assumed it stood for something like badass or BA was just something or his rank or whatever. But nope, BA is Bosco Albert.
What was his last name? I thought it was Barabbas with a B.
Baracus with a C. Kind of like Baraka from Mortal Kombat. Yeah. So just think nowadays, Bosco Albert Baraka from Mortal Kombat. That would be funny if Baraka's real name was Bosco.
Right.
I'm a demon from hell. My name is Bosco Albert.
With swords in my arms for whatever reason.
Yep. Makes it a pain in the butt to wipe my ass.
Well, they're retractable.
Were they retractable? Oh, okay. I didn't remember that.
I don't know how retractable they were in the game, but I know in the other stuff they were.
I was wondering too, if you had retractable blades like that, and if you're not feeling good and you just sneeze really hard, do those blades come out kind of like a shart sort of thing? Or cough?
You think so? Then of course that'd be really awkward sometimes.
The show was an instantaneous hit, premiering at #1 and staying there, taking NBC out of third place among the big three and putting them at #1. Because back then, all we had was ABC, NBC, and CBS. And we did have basic cable, but, that was for rich people.
Yeah, I remember people kind of say, cable wasn't much. I mean, they were specialty stuff, but as you said, it was just...
And then back then, even satellite was totally different than it is now, because you just have that giant, huge satellite dish in your front yard, and you didn't really have a satellite package, or a company, you just pick up whatever satellite you could out of the sky and be like, there it is. And you could just literally look in this book and be like, hey, here's where the Denver new satellite is, point it there, and you get Denver TV.
Yay.
And punch in the specs and everybody just watch the satellite dish be like, roar. And then those things were in lawn ornaments for the longest time of our youth.
Especially the big giant ones.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm talking about. Those giant black ones that were just, 20 feet across. But boy, howdy, those were fancy back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, wow, look what I got. Look what Dad got the other day. He spent $50,000.
Yeah, exactly. He works at this place called Microsoft that just opened up and made it big. The A-Team was an instantaneous hit, premiering at #1 and staying there, taking NBC out of third place of the big three networks. The general public, especially kids, loved the show. However, watchdog groups hated the show, claiming it as a hyper-violent show that damages children. They even touted the number of up to 39 acts of violence in 1 hour, making it the most violent TV show ever, they said. But as we talked about earlier, what they don't mention, this is all cartoon violence. They just stand there shooting at nothing in particular. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody gets shot. Nobody dies. Explosions happen. People just leap slowly out of the way, and they're fine 2 seconds later, and they run away being all scared.
They'll empty the entire clip towards someone who's 10 feet away, and they show going, oh, I'm scared.
Yeah. Or they'll empty that entire clip right at the ground at their feet and make them do the little dance before they run off, because, bullets aren't going to ricochet potentially off the dirt and hit them in the leg or anything like that. Dance for me. Pew, pew, pew. Oh, God, it hit a rock.
Oh, yes. I remember the stories of the special forces that went to Vietnam and shot at their feet and scared them.
With their gorilla costumes on.
Yeah, with their gorilla costumes on.
That was a big psychological warfare of the Vietnam War. Is just a bunch of soldiers running around in gorilla costumes shooting at the ground in front of people. We're both frightened and confused.
Why are you here? Go away.
Yeah. We wanted none of this. Go firebomb Cambodia some more.
Firebomb someone else.
Yeah, right. B.A. Baracus was supposed to be a side character in the show, but quickly became a fan favorite, and even soon he was having whole episodes based around him, and the people loved him. His popularity kept growing as the show went on. However, one person who wasn't too big of a fan of this was George Peppard, who played Hannibal on the show. You see, Peppard was a seasoned vet in the acting world, and he didn't like the fact that Mr. T wasn't an actor who paid his dues and only got on the show because of his looks and popularity. No altercations or anything happened on the set, just some grumbling and some bitter interviews going back and forth.
Like Hannibal was the
he was the leader of the group.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I love when we're playing against the other. Yep, that was George Peppard, and he was actually like a pretty up there actor, you know, did stuff on Broadway, Oscar-winning movies, this and that. So he was an actor's actor, some people would say.
I guess. I mean, sure. Do you want some up-and-comer coming out of nowhere? But, you know, at the same time...
That's how Hollywood is, baby.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens sometimes. Some douchebag is in the right place at the right time, and then, ta-da! I mean, again, I gripe about that stuff all the time. I sure wish I was in the right place at the right time.
Right.
But, unfortunately, I haven't been.
If George Peppard is alive today, he probably hates the YouTube crowd.
Oh, my
You
God.
became famous for nothing!
So, I mean, plus he also became famous at the time when it was, you know, Mr. T couldn't. Yeah, and, you know, even in the 80s, it was, or hell, even the 90s, I was hearing about, like, Family Matters. They told Urkel, the guy who played Urkel, you're never going to win an award because you're black, basically. Yep. And so, this was the 80s, so, dude, let him have it. Give him...
Yeah, right. Let him have this. I mean, he made it, man. Be happy for him.
And such if you're such a hoity-toity actor, surely that you'll get more work after this. I'm sure Mr. T is going to, because he got hired for his looks and he's solidified with that role, you're probably going to have a better time getting other roles that's not angry black man.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, because he had range and stuff. Mr. T, I mean, love him or hate him, he was kind of a one-trick pony. He was just a tough I pity the fool dude.
Yeah. I mean, he rode that pony till it dropped. And good on him. You know,
yeah, I would totally do the same thing.
I would say, don't have a cow, man, all day. Like,
if I over and over again.
If I got $50 every time I said, don't have a cow, man, I'd be like, that's all I'd say.
Yep, I would just be walking around like the don't have a cow man on loop.
Right.
Just like, I didn't do it. Yep, pay me for it. I will say it as much as you want. Here's another fun fact about the show. Mr. T never said I pity the fool on the show. That was strictly a Rocky III thing at that time. Yep. Seems like that'd be something he would have said, and it wasn't trademarked at the time either, but, you know, maybe it's a studio thing.
Or maybe he's just like, no, I have too much respect for the line. I will not say it.
That line must remain pure in my mind.
Until someone pays me enough.
Yep. So being popular with the kids on the show, the Children's Hospital Network got in touch with Mr. T about charity, and he jumped at the chance to help the kids. He did, after all, love working with kids in the Chicago projects, and now that he had money and fame to really help out, he was all about helping out the kids. He was constantly taking kids on the set of the A-Team or visiting them in the hospital, hanging out with them all day, just being a cool dude. Kind of like how John Cena does nowadays, you know? He doesn't just show up for a few seconds and be like, hey, what's up? And then takes off. You know, hangs out, talks with the kids, plays with them, all sorts of fun stuff. I mean, it's far better having him or John Cena there than somebody like, I don't know, Frank Sinatra showing up and be like, hey, kid, sorry about the cancer. Where's your mom, eh? I'm going to give her the old bada bing tonight. You know.
The bada bing.
The bada bing. Yeah. As the poor kid's just dying. Be like, what are you going to do to my mother?
My mother, no.
My mother, no. That's just kind of how I picture that happening.
Yeah.
Oh,
you basically, your interaction with fucking, you know, that Frank Sinatra's going to be fucking hentai. So,
he did all sorts of things with that hat and cigar.
This has been the first half of the Oft Off Topic show on Mr. T. Stay tuned for our next episode where we discuss the most violent TV show of the 80s, two of Mr. T's coworkers who really didn't like him, and how the Umbrella Corporation's T-Virus may be responsible for his entire career. This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.